Excellency, Dame Cecile Grenada, Governor General of Grenada, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada and incoming Chairman of the Monetary Council, Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, our outgoing Chairman of the Monetary Council and of course Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, Honorable Gaston Brown, Member of the Monetary Council for Antigua and Barbuda, all members of the Monetary Council, I'm sure they'll be happy for me to do that, other ministers of government, parliamentarians, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, Mr. Trevor Brathwaite, Deputy Governor, and other senior members of the staff of the ECCB, permanent secretaries and other senior government officials, members of the banking community, specially invited guests, and there's one in the room who I must recognize, Mrs. Ursula Antoine, MBE, my dear mother. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, citizens and friends of the ECCU, many of whom are joining us by our live stream, good morning. We are delighted to be back in the Isle of Spice. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome each of you to the handing over ceremony to mark the change in chairmanship of the Eastern Caribbean Monetary Council. Today, the chairmanship of the Council passes from the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance for the Commonwealth of Dominica, to Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance for Grenada. At this juncture, we wish to record our gratitude to the government and people of Grenada for the excellent arrangements afforded us for the conduct of the 91st meeting of our Monetary Council. Article 7.2 of the ECCB agreement states, and I quote, "The Council shall meet not less than twice each year to receive from the Governor the Bank's reports on monetary and credit conditions and to provide directives and guidelines on matters of monetary and credit policy to the Bank and for such purposes as are prescribed under the agreement." End of quote. It is 10 years since the onset of the global financial crisis. The Monetary Council convenes at a time when the global economy is recording its best growth in 7 years, with projections of 3.9% for both this year and next year. That said, the global economy is pregnant with risks, including climate change, spiraling debt levels, trade wars, Brexit, rising oil prices for those which are oil-importing countries, and the tightening of financial conditions. Indeed, we are witnessing the end of easy as major central banks normalize interest rates after the unprecedented actions taken to reboot the global economy. Just over a month ago, I attended the annual meetings of the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, a convocation of central banks and regulators from around the globe. At that meeting, there was recognition of the considerable progress made in respect of post-crisis reforms, such as the recapitalization of banks and the adoption of macroprudential frameworks to deliver stronger oversight of systemically important financial institutions. And yet, there was a strong call to complete unfinished business before the onset of the next crisis or downturn. That unfinished business includes unburdening balance sheets of banks with large portfolios of non-performing loans and untangling the web that is a 600 million market for derivatives. You might recall Warren Buffett once referred to derivatives as financial weapons of mass destruction. I now pivot to the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Growth for this year is projected around 2%, largely because of what happened with the hurricanes Irma and Maria last year. But for next year, we are projecting a promising 3.5%. Exactly 3 weeks ago, the ECCU celebrated 42 years of stability of the EC dollar, pegged at EC 2.7 to US $1. That is a remarkable feat and a testimony to the resilience of our monetary union. Today, I confirm our EC dollar is strong. As of last Friday, July 21st, the backing ratio for our foreign reserves was 97.2%. And if you're interested in weeks for import cover, that's about 30 weeks. Here in the ECCU, we too have made important progress since the global financial crisis, having enacted a new banking act, resolved some troubled banks, and furthermore, the rollout of a new risk-based supervisory framework for banks is imminent. We can also point to progress made by some member countries, including Grenada, to put their fiscal houses in order and build fiscal resilience. That notwithstanding, we too have some unfinished business, which includes establishment of a regional crisis management plan, adoption of a macro-prudential framework to ensure effective oversight of not just our banks, but all our financial institutions, especially the ones that are systemically important. And I don't know if you know this, but there are now non-bank financial institutions that are bigger than some of our banks. Enactment of a uniform insurance law and the establishment of the Eastern Caribbean Financial Services Commission, which is essentially a regional regulator that will deal with some of the non-bank financial players. And what that would do is to create a single space for example, insurance, just as we now have for banking and for securities. And why is that so? Because in banking we have both a regulator, the ECCB, and a single banking law. In securities, we have a regulator, which is the Eastern Caribbean Securities Commission, and a single securities law. We do not yet have that in insurance. And therefore, that is part of the unfinished business that we must take account. And don't forget, many of us know only painfully too well the debacle and the fallout from British American and CLICO. Establishment of a credit bureau to support enhanced credit underwriting, and equally important, to open up the risk appetite of lending institutions. And establishment of a deposit insurance scheme, obviously to protect our depositors. Furthermore, aside from the regional government securities market, we are yet to fully optimize the very modern platform that is the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. For example, 1 in 2 citizens in the United States are invested in the US stock market. Do you have any idea what that number is in the ECCU? Well, we're doing some research now, but my humble estimation is that that number is less than 1 in 10. And by the way, the ECCU is 630,000 people. So less than 63,000 people are invested in the market. Actually, it's a lot smaller than that. Now, 17 years after the creation of this very important vehicle, we must now ensure that the Eastern Caribbean securities market becomes a source of wealth creation for the people of the ECCU in the very same way that citizens in the United States, US households, derive much of their wealth from the US stock market. We set it up. Now we must leverage it for our benefit and for our people. And so going forward, we believe that our regional stock exchange, with connectivity to the global capital markets, ought to be a channel of wealth creation for our people. And the new strategic plan for the Eastern Caribbean Stock Exchange will propel us in that direction. But you know, even as we contemplate our unfinished business, we must now contend with new and emerging business. At the 2018 World Economic Forum in Davos, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau remarked, and I quote, "The pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again," end of quote. Does anyone recall when the first ATM was opened? Well, that was 1967, 51 years ago. Today, the pace of financial technology, inclusive of peer-to-peer lending, digital wallets, crowdfunding, crypto assets, and initial coin offerings, is breathtaking. And with the ubiquitous smartphone, has the potential to make financial inclusion a reality for all. Lest we forget, these technologies were once mere ideas. Yet, as William Blake, the British poet, poignantly observes, what is now proved was once only imagined. With Blake's observation in mind, policymakers and regulators, and we are in the room, ought to avoid a failure of imagination as we contemplate and craft the way forward. Indeed, the onus is on all of us to ensure that the deployment of fintech and our reduced use of cash develops in a way that maximizes opportunities and minimizes risks for our people. That said, imagination is a necessary but not sufficient condition, for there must also be cooperation. Indeed, regional and international cooperation is not merely the preferred way, but it is the only way to harness these opportunities while mitigating risks such as money laundering and cybersecurity. Our shared vision of transforming the ECCU, as articulated in our strategic plan, is fundamentally about shared prosperity. Yes, Reverend James, it's about our people. And so it's about shared prosperity for all who work and live in the ECCU. To that end, we must take care of our business, unfinished as well as new and emerging. As governor, I feel a strong sense of urgency and opportunity. Today, I reaffirm the commitment of our board, management, and staff of the ECCB to support our Monetary Council as together we transform the ECCU for the good of the people we serve. Working together, governments, social partners, development partners, and our people, and by the grace of Almighty God, we shall succeed. I thank you.